What's up everybody, I'm Yannick, and in this video I'll show you how to get killer wedding reception panoramic photo to get from this to this. Okay, let's get started and get to the computer. Okay, so we are in Lightroom now, and the first four photos, those are the photos that we'll be stitching together. So these four. This is the raw, the DNG stitched together, and this is our final result. So before we start doing the editing, let's go through some basic how to first create the photos that are good for stitching and then to create the wedding reception panoramic. So I recommend using a tripod, and basically you have to level the tripod so that the camera is all straight. Have a relatively wide angle lens. This one, these photos we photograph with a Canon 2470 on a Sony a7R II camera. This is a 42 megapixel camera, so it gives us a lot of dynamic range to capture all the details in both the highlights and the shadows. But what's more important is that the photos are leveled and you have a very decent overlap of the reception from frame to frame. We have literally probably like 5 minutes to do these photos. That's why we did only 4 of them. But you can see that there's still a pretty good amount of overlap between those photos. The f-stop, I recommend something pretty high. So this one, I believe we shot at f16. Our exposure was 15 seconds. So that's a pretty long exposure. So in case somebody goes in and goes, to go through the reception, we don't have that person in our frame because it's blurry. So a long exposure helps with having people disappear when they just move around the reception. You don't want to go with the lens that is too wide. So anything under 24, I think will be too risky. The distortion on the wide angle lens is pretty significant, and we want the panoramic to be pretty straight. Even with the 24/7, you will see the distortion is actually pretty significant, but it actually makes a nice panoramic shot. So I'll show you just a second. Let's start develop the individual photos. So what's important that you only have to develop the first one, the first raw. And then I'm going to press D to go to the develop module, and then we're going to copy and paste the development settings from this photo to the remaining 3 so that all of them have exactly the same development settings, so that when we merge they all look the same. So the first thing that we're going to try is to cool down the photo a little bit. So we're going to go maybe, let's see, almost there. I think I had 39 and 3190 before. We're gonna bump up the exposure to a little bit, maybe like that. We're gonna bump up the contrast, a lot more. These photos like to be contrasty, so let's keep it a bit more contrasty because all the details pop. I'm sorry, should be 21 here. Okay, now we're gonna remove the highlights. I'll bring the highlights down because there's a lot of those chandeliers, so there's a lot of light in there. So we're gonna make it even to like -62. We're gonna open the shadows practically to the max. So we want the details in all the shadows here. We're gonna bring the whites as well so that we have the details more in the highlights in all the chandeliers. So let's do this. And then we're going to bring the blacks a little bit so that it's still a good contrasty photo. So far the basic exposure, this is what we did. So this is before and after. Before and after. So we have the details and it's a little bit more contrasty. So basically that's where we are right now. I'm going to remove a little bit of the vibrancy because it's still the purples are very vibrant, so we want to have a little bit, we want our photos to be vibrant but not to be oversaturated. Now let's go to the tone curve, and here we're going to bring down the highlights again so that we have the details in the chandeliers and all the lights. So basically these are these areas here and in the back that I'm most concerned about, because those hot lights are so hot that the difference in exposure was so big that we have to bring those highlights down a lot more now. I'm gonna bring the light ones tiny bit, so a little bit like that, maybe. Then we're gonna open the shadows, so the darks, we're gonna go plus 24. 25 is fine. And then on the blacks, we're gonna open up to plus 5 as well. And there's really no formula here. I mean, everything that I do here, it's really specific to this reception and how the lights and how the colors are. You basically want to have a raw that has the details, the most details in the highlights and the most details in the shadows, and then the remaining of the editing we'll do in Photoshop. Okay, so let's move down to the HSL. So we're going to correct some saturation and lightness of some of the colors. So first we're going to remove some of the saturation in the purples. The cameras don't like that much saturation in purples, so we try to bring a little bit down so that the purples are a little bit more tamed. So we're going to minus 18. Let's see, here it is. And then on the lightness, we are gonna bring the purples down a little bit, maybe like minus 7. And then the magenta, because I want the magentas in the tablecloth and everywhere to brighten up a little bit, so I'm gonna make it plus 20. Okay, or plus 22, it's all good. Okay, so now we don't have anything in the split toning. In the sharpening, the only thing I'm going to do is just do the masking, and I'm going to press Alt right now to get into the edge detection view. And I'm going to move it until I really see very just clean edges around. So I think 69 is pretty good here. Okay. So this is the sharpening. Noise reduction, since we shot this at 50, so we don't have to reduce the noise that much. I mean, just a tiny bit, so that we remove the noise from the log exposure, but otherwise this photo has pretty low noise since we shot it at ISO 50. And then the last thing we're going to do is to bring in the calibration. We're going to bring it to maybe 14 to give it a little bit more punch overall. Under lens correction, we'll remove the chromatic aberration and we will enable the profile correction. Since the Canon lens was through an adapter on the Sony camera, that's why Lightroom does not recognize the lens right away. So we're going to select it. So we're going to Canon and we are going to select 2470 Mark II, and that's it. So that now we know that the lens is, the photo is corrected properly for this lens. So now we have the first photo developed. So let's apply the same settings to all 4 photos that we photographed to be part of this panoramic of this reception hall in San Diego here. So select all 4. So I'm pressing Shift, clicking on the last photo. And now I'm going to press Sync here on the right side, and I'm going to select all settings. So you can, if all of them are not selected, just click on Check All, and this will select all settings, and then synchronize. Now you can see all 4 photos are now in the same development style. So let's go through them one by one, and let's double check how it is. So this is the right side. Then we move it more to the center, then we move a little bit more to the left, and more to the left. So these are the 4 photos that we'll be stitching together. Okay, so next one, press G to go back to grid. We're going to select the 4 photos, and then right click on them. And we're going to go to the photo merge and select panorama. Now the computer will do the analysis of the photos that we will be trying to stitch together. This may take a little bit depending how fast your computer is and also how big the files are. Okay, so now we have the panoramic created. Usually the spherical mode is the best one. I mean, you can click through these and see whether, you know, anything will look better, whether you do cylindrical or perspective. But I'm usually, actually this one doesn't even work, so spherical usually works the best for me. And you'll see there, you know, regardless of, you know, what's your coverage, you see that there's some white stuff here, and basically this is where there were no photos taken in that area. If you move the boundary wrap, it's basically going to extend the corners, and you can see now it fills the whole frame. And basically now we are ready to create a merge panoramic, and this will create a raw file or DNG file with all the development that we had in our file. So let's create it. So click merge, and now you can see that it's creating a second because we already created one. So it's creating a new panorama photo, and this may take a while. Because, you know, now it's really doing all the work to stitch those photos together and making sure that everything looks good. Okay, so now you see that it created the second panoramic. The file, it has under 2 or -2 extensions, since we already created the previous panoramic, so it didn't want to overwrite with the same file name. So basically this is our raw file. This is the DNG, but with the combined 4 photos together. So you can see you have a whole perspective of the reception hall, and those kind of photos are really enjoyed both by the couple but also by all the vendors, because it shows you the whole reception place in all its beauty and decoration before everybody walks in. So just to show you that this is still a raw file, so you will see that you have still all the adjustments of the raw files that we did before, and if something still doesn't look right, we can still make further adjustments. So for example, if you want to bring the highlights down even more, we can always do it, and it just brings the highlights more. So I'm gonna undo it, but basically this is still a raw file. It's just stitched together of the 4 rows that we created in our camera. Okay, so now this is basically all we had to do in Lightroom. And let's move to Photoshop to see the editing steps to take this photo from this to this. Okay, so we are in Photoshop now, and this is the raw file that I got from Lightroom. So I open it in Photoshop, and this is what we will end up with. So this is before and after. Before and after. Okay, so let's go layer by layer, and let me explain everything that I did here. So I'm just zoom in a little bit more so that we can see better. The first thing that bothered me is this little piece of, I think it was a carpet or something, but it just didn't flow properly. So what I did, I basically copied, I took from here, you know, and then copied to the next layer, and then I masked it out. So so this is the mask that I did, and basically this is, so this is with mask, and this is without mask. So basically this layer, all I did is just hide this piece here and kind of blend in the carpet here. Luckily those patterns are pretty crazy, so I could have done it very easily to kind of match without being too obvious that I patched here something. So the next step is some color correction, and we did this with selective color and color balance. So let's go first to selective color, and really there is really no science here. Selective color, you really have to move the sliders back and forth on some of the main colors to see how this photo looks and whether you like it or not. So you know, this was I really moved it. For example, in the cyan, I kind of moved around and see, like, obviously this was too much, like not enough pop. If I moved to this direction more in the cyan, you know, like it was just too much. So I think I had it at 15 if I remember correctly. So yeah, I have it at 15. But the main things we did is red. So these are the numbers that we did. We did some yellows. No, we didn't actually do yellow. I don't think anything in green. Nothing in cyan, nothing in blues. In magenta, since this photo has so much magentas, so that's what we did here with magenta. It's pretty extreme, but basically we wanted to correct and make a feel much nicer of these colors here. Then in the white, we clarified the whites. So basically to have a good white, pure whites in this area, or as pure as we could get. That's why, you know, like you can see that, you know, as you move those, you see how it affects the white. So we wanted to keep it, you know, as clear, as pure white as possible, while still having the look of the reception hall. And you know, the same here. So you know, this is, you know, like when you move it, you start to see, you know, what you like and what you don't like. Blacks, we just basically make it brighter or darker. So you know, as you move it here, the whites are becoming, you know, brighter and brighter. Okay, so that's what we did with whites. Neutral we didn't touch, and I think we did some of the blacks. Actually, just make them a little bit deeper black. So if from 0 to 5, it's basically that makes those blacks a little bit deeper. And then we just move -1 towards cyan, but you know, I think, you know, it'll be even hard to view it on the screen here. And then on the color balance, so we did here is 6 toward the cyan, and then 3 toward the blues. And let me see if we do it. Nothing in the shadows and nothing in highlights. So just the midtone. So you can see the difference. It's very subtle, but it kind of cooled down a little bit, right? So when you move from toward the cyan and blues, it basically cooled down the photo. If you move the color balance to reds and yellows, it warms up. So okay, so the color correction is basically, this is before and this is after. So this is just purely color correction, just to make sure that the room looks as close to what we remember in person, you know, as possible. The next one we did is the Nik color effects from Google. Actually, somebody else bought it down, so it's not from Google anymore. But we used the detail extractor and the pro contrast. So those are the two filters in color effects. So this is the, let me run color effects and show you this. Okay, so we are in Nik color effects. So the first one is the pro contrast. So we just do +5%, +13%. And the other one that we add is the detail extractor. So if you press shift and click on the next filter, it will add it versus replacing it. And obviously when you run it at 100%, it's way too strong. So we're probably going to reduce it. Usually for this kind of photo, we run around 50. Something like that. So you will see before and after. So it just gives a little more punchiness, more details. So it's like a color contrast. It just looks a little bit better. Okay, so let's press cancel since we already did this step. But basically that's what we did in the layer that I was just showing you. So this is this color effect. So you can see this is before, this is after. So this is just the detail extractor and the pro contrast. Now the next one, what we did is we duplicated this this layer, so Control J, and then we changed this to luminosity. And let's say this is dodge and burn example. This is just another way of doing dodging and burning. So, and then we can go to our dodge and burn tool to make it brighter or darker. So let's say dodge tool, and then usually we'll run it at 5%. So you'll see that, for example, if I want this flowers to be a little bit brighter, I just paint it a little bit. And I find that, you know, this method is, it gives me the best result without looking fake in terms of, you know, how the brightness. And normally I do this with a pen. Here on the laptop where I'm recording, I'm using a mouse, so it's a little bit harder for me. But basically that's what I would do, and I would just make it a little bit brighter here. So this is so far what we did. So you can see that how, you know, the flowers, you know, were a little bit brighter. So this is basically in this dodge and burn luminance. this is what I did. And you can see this is all the dodging and burning I did. So I made, you know, the dance floor brighter, all the flowers brighter, the center table, the cake, all the other pieces. So once again, before and after, before and after. So this was the dodging and burning on luminance. The next thing I did sharpening, but not to sharpen, but to add texture. In order to do this, so this is we do it with also with the Nik output sharpener, and the way we do it, we actually reduce the sharpening settings and just add texture. I mean structure. Okay, so we remove adaptive sharpening to 0, output sharpening to 0, and you can see structures at 15, and local contrast is -2. And the local contrast we reduce it so they kind of compensate for the additional structure that we added. And basically, if you look at before and after, what it does, it adds this kind of, you know, I'm going to exaggerate so that you can see better. Here it is. I'm going to start. Okay. See, so now you can start to see this texture. It's like almost like a color contrast again. So it just gives a little bit more sharpness and a little bit, a dramatic feel. So this is what we did here, but we didn't want to have the effect on the whole frame. We wanted only on the selected areas. So if I look at the my masking, this is basically how I mask out. So white is where we wanted we painted in the effect, and black is where we hit it. So again, so basically if you look at, I'm going to press the backsplash now, so that gives me the just the visuals where my mask is. So basically everything that is red is hidden, everything that is see-through, that's basically where the effect was applied. So all the curtains, all the stands, the cake here, the flowers, the centerpieces, the main table, that's basically where I added the effect of the additional structure. So this is before and this is after. So yes, again, it gives a bit more pop to the photo, a bit more drama. It appears sharper and just overall just, you know, punchier, you know, in my opinion. Then the next one is just added a little bit of vibrance. So I added like plus 23 on vibrance. So basically I just want to make the colors a little bit more standing out. And then this piece of the carpet here just was way too bright to me. It just kind of like it was in the front. And so basically in this layer it was a, actually, I'm sorry. This was this layer here, dodging and burning. So you see this is what I did in the carpet here. Okay. In this layer, this is a black and white adjustment layer. So black and white adjustment layer you created from here. But I put this black and white layer on luminosity again. So on its own, it basically just affects the luminosity of individual colors. And you can see that if I move my reds back and forth, it makes the reds brighter or darker. So it doesn't make the photo black and white. It's just a way to make, you know, to make the different colors seem brighter or darker. So in this situation, I make the red much brighter. The yellow, it was just at 20. So just kind of, you can see, like when you move, you can see what's being affected by it, right? So don't go to the extreme, but you know, here I can control how, you know, much the chandeliers, you know, how much dark I want them to be. And then the blues, again, you know, this is the everything. You see like how it affects everything here. So this is basically what we did here. And then the last step, we did a high pass sharpen for this layer. So in order to do a high pass sharpen, if you're not familiar, you basically, if you create a new layer, you send the mode to soft light, you fill it with 50% gray, and then you run filter, other, and high pass. And basically, usually we run somewhere between 3 to 4, depending how big this file is. Since this is a huge file, you know, I can run at 4, and now it will run it. And basically, it just sharpens the photo. I know it's hard to see in this resolution, but it does sharpen the photo. So basically this is, I'm just going to delete this layer. And this is the sharpening of this photo. So again, not too many layers, not very complex, and I didn't do all the cleanups. You know, if maybe for like a final photo for the album, I would do the cleanup in all the settings of the little things. I just wanted to show here, you know, how we can do it. So this is before and after. And again, these panoramic photos are great for the vendors. They love to put those as the header on the website. They love to share them. And then this is a great photo as a double page spread in the wedding album for our couples. Okay, so this is how you create those wedding reception panoramic photos. I hope you enjoyed this whole tutorial. If you have any questions, please post them below in the comment section. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel and also give it a thumbs up so that other people can discover this video as well. So thank you so much, and we'll see you at the next video.